The Cold War wasn't just a clash of nations, it was a silent, invisible war that consumed the souls of men and women who lived in the shadows, where every handshake could hide a dagger and every secret could alter the fate of millions. For decades, the world stood on the brink of nuclear annihilation, with superpowers staring each other down across the Iron Curtain that divided Europe into two hostile camps. In the democratic West, led by the United States, and the communist East, dominated by the Soviet Union, fear and suspicion were the currency of survival. Espionage became the ultimate weapon in a battle with no open battlefields. Yet it claimed countless lives through arrests, executions, and shattered families. Imagine the constant dread that hung over Berlin, a city split in half, where families were torn apart by a wall whose foundations of mistrust were already laid deep. Spies from all sides infiltrated governments, stole nuclear secrets, and turned friends into enemies overnight. This was the world that shaped Michał Goleniewski, a man whose life would become a testament to the human cost of this shadow war. His story is one of courage mixed with torment, loyalty twisted into a double cross, and a journey from dedicated communist officer to one of the most valuable triple agents the West ever had. It's a tale so filled with suspense, it feels like a cinematic thriller, yet it is rooted in the harsh realities of the 20th century's most dangerous era. Born on August 16, 1922, in a small town then part of Poland, young Michał Goleniewski, or Michal as we'll call him, grew up near the volatile Soviet border. His father, an accountant, struggled with alcoholism, while his mother held the family together. They later moved near the German border, giving Michal an early taste of the shifting political tensions that would define his life. He graduated high school just as the storm clouds of World War II gathered. When the Nazis invaded Poland in 1939, the occupation brought unimaginable horrors. Cities were bombed, families displaced, and a systematic campaign of terror was unleashed. Michal found himself working as an accountant on German-administered properties, a role that later drew accusations of collaboration. He claimed, however, to have been arrested by the Nazis on suspicion of underground activities. The truth of those years remains shrouded in the fog of war. Witnessing friends disappear into concentration camps and feeling the daily humiliation of occupation crushed any naive idealism he might have held. It also hardened him, teaching him the art of observation and how to navigate power structures. When the war ended and the Red Army imposed a new Soviet-backed communist regime, Michal saw an opportunity. He enlisted in the Polish army, joined the party, and soon entered the ranks of the notorious Ministry of Public Security. Starting as a lowly clerk, he proved himself efficient, ambitious, and utterly reliable, steadily rising through the ranks. By the early 1950s, Michal had become a lieutenant colonel, a chief of counterintelligence. He gained a fearsome reputation as a relentless interrogator who could break suspects with psychological pressure rather than just brute force. By 1955, he was deputy head of the scientific and intelligence branch, with access to the most sensitive state secrets, military technology, nuclear research, and detailed files on Eastern Bloc spy networks across the West. But Michal was living a double life. He was also serving as the KGB's point man in Warsaw, a double agent feeding information about his own Polish colleagues back to Moscow. This dual role created the first cracks in his loyalty. The more he saw of the Soviet system up close, the purges, the show trials, the endless surveillance, the more he began to question the ideology he had once embraced. His official trips to the West planted seeds of doubt that grew into a full moral awakening. During moments in neutral cities, he could breathe freer air and observe people debating politics without fear. He realized the communist utopia was a lie built on fear, while the West, flawed as it was, offered genuine freedom of thought and a life without constant paranoia. His personal life added layers of torment to his divided soul. In 1946, he had married Anna. Together they raised her daughter and had 2 children of their own. But Anna's wartime traumas led to severe mental health struggles, including delusional schizophrenia. His long absences and rising career strained the marriage, which was crumbling by 1954. The communist system, which discouraged divorce, added to his sense of entrapment. Into this chaos-centered Irmgard-Kampf, an East German secretary he met by chance in he introduced himself under a false identity, Jan Roman, a Polish journalist and resistance fighter. What began as a casual encounter blossomed into a deep, intense love affair. Their secret letters were filled with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with the cold calculations of his spy world. She learned Polish, dreaming of a future together in Warsaw, while he proposed marriage, all the while hiding his existing wife and children. This love brought him rare human warmth, but it also created immense risk. In the spy game, Personal attachments are liabilities that can be exploited by enemies on all sides. By April 1958, the internal conflict had reached a breaking point. Michal made the fateful decision to reach out to the other side. Using the alias German for sniper, he initiated contact with the United States Embassy in Bern, Switzerland. His first messages were cautious. Anonymous letters passed through dead drops, detailing fragments of Soviet and Polish intelligence that were too valuable to ignore. The Americans were electrified. This wasn't low-level gossip. This was high-grade material from deep inside the Eastern Bloc. Soon, the CIA took over, handling the asset they codenamed Sniper. They established coded communications through microfilm, signals in newspaper ads, and brush passes in crowded squares. But from the very beginning, distrust poisoned the relationship. Michal insisted on dealing only with the FBI, fearing Soviet penetration in other Western agencies, a fear that would later prove disturbingly accurate. He felt manipulated, a pawn in a larger game between rival American agencies. Every communication carried the risk of discovery. Polish counterintelligence and the KGB were constantly hunting for leaks. Michal lived with a constant knot in his stomach, changing his routines, doubling back on streets, and scanning crowds for signs of surveillance. The psychological pressure was relentless, his nights filled with nightmares of arrest and execution. The intelligence Sniper provided was nothing short of revolutionary. A flood of hundreds of pages of top-secret documents, photographed with a tiny Minox camera, poured into Western hands. He unmasked KGB moles buried deep within Western intelligence, including the infamous British diplomat George Blake and the MI6 officer Harry Hood. He exposed a vast network of Soviet spies operating across Europe and North America, leading to over 150 arrests. He provided the complete order of battle for the Soviet-controlled Polish military, details on their rocketry programs, and the identities of KGB officers stationed in embassies worldwide. He even warned President Kennedy about a key KGB operative in the White House inner circle. The sheer volume and quality of his information were unprecedented. He was, quite simply, the most important source the West had ever recruited from behind the Iron Curtain. For 3 years, Michal walked this tightrope, a ghost in his own life, betraying one master to serve another, all while the net tightened around him. His secret love affair with Irmgard intensified, their correspondence a desperate lifeline in a sea of paranoia. He knew it was only a matter of time before he was discovered. His only way out was to escape, to make a final, desperate run for the West. In late 1960, the noose began to tighten. A Polish counterintelligence investigation, codenamed Lira, was closing in on the mole in their ranks. Michal knew his time was running out. On Christmas Day, he told his Polish superiors he needed to travel to East Berlin for an urgent meeting with a KGB contact. It was a lie. This was his one chance to escape. Before leaving, he arranged for Irmgard to meet him, telling her they were finally leaving for a new life together. They planned their rendezvous with the precision of a military operation. On January 4th, 1961, under the cover of a foggy Berlin winter night, Michał Goleniewski slipped away from his KGB minders. He met Irmgard at a pre-arranged spot and, with the help of the CIA, they were smuggled across the border into West Berlin. Just hours later, the KGB and Polish intelligence realized their top man had vanished. A frantic, block-wide manhunt began, but it was too late. Sniper was gone. Safely in the West, Michal was debriefed for months by the CIA, pouring out every last secret he held. His defection sent shockwaves through the communist world, leading to purges and a complete overhaul of their security procedures. AID single-handedly dismantled entire spy networks and exposed decades of Soviet infiltration. The value of his intelligence was, in the words of one CIA officer, beyond calculation. Michal and Irmgard were relocated to the United States under new identities. He testified before the Senate and continued to work with intelligence agencies. But his new life was far from the peaceful existence he had craved. The psychological scars of his years in the shadows ran deep. He was haunted by paranoia, seeing KGB assassins around every corner. His relationship with the CIA soured as he battled them over money and recognition. Tragically, his story took a bizarre and sad turn. He began to develop grandiose delusions, eventually claiming to be Tsarevich Alexei, the heir to the Russian throne, who was believed to have been executed with his family in 1918. This claim, which he maintained until his death in 1990, alienated him from his supporters and cast a shadow over his incredible legacy as a master spy. The man who had exposed so many secrets became trapped in a fantasy of his own making. Michal's life is a powerful reminder of the human cost of the Cold War. He was a man of immense courage, and complexity. A patriot who betrayed his country to serve a greater truth, and a hero whose mind was ultimately broken by the very world of shadows he had fought to escape. His story is not just a spy thriller, it's a profound human tragedy, a testament to the fact that in the silent wars of espionage, there are no true winners. Briefings that dismantled entire spy networks across the globe. Among the most explosive revelations were details on Lambda 1 and Lambda 2, codenames that pointed directly to devastating moles inside Western services. Lambda 1 unmasked George Blake, the KGB's prized asset, deep within Britain's MI6, who had betrayed dozens, if not hundreds of Western agents operating behind the Iron Curtain, many of whom were arrested, tortured, or executed because of Blake's treachery. Blake had also compromised major operations, like the Berlin Tunnel known as Gold D, where the West had tapped Soviet land. Sniper's tip led to Blake's eventual arrest in 2 years that shocked the intelligence community. Lambda 2 helped expose Harry Hook, a clerk in the British Admiralty's Portland Naval Base, who was passing highly classified submarine and nuclear research secrets to the Soviets as part of the infamous Portland spy ring. Houghton worked with his lover FOG, and their handler the Soviet illegal resident Gordon Lonsdale, whose real name was Conan. Together, they funneled critical defense information that could have shifted the balance of naval power. The ring also included the deep covery J. Maurice and Lona Cohen, operating under the stolen identities of Peter and Helen Kroger in London, a couple who had roots in atomic espionage from the Manhattan Project era and continued running agents and dead drops for the KGB into the Cold War. Sniper's information allowed MI5 to roll up the entire network in a series of dramatic arrests that made headlines and crippled Soviet operations in Britain. But the revelations went far beyond the UK. He exposed networks in Sweden where Colonel Stigwin, a senior Air Force officer, had been selling NATO, US, and British secrets for decades. In West Germany, he identified Heinz Felf and Heinz Clemens, who had penetrated the BND counterintelligence service and betrayed scores of CIA officers, true identities, and covers. In the United States and Middle East, he mapped out embedded agents and front organizations, even pointing to a shadowy Soviet-controlled group of former Nazis nicknamed Hack operating in post-war West Germany. In total, according to internal CIA assessments, Sniper identified 1,693 communist bloc spies burrowed into Western governments and intelligence services, an unparalleled haul that saved countless lives, shut down operations, and forced the Eastern Bloc to scramble for new covers and methods. The impact was seismic. NATO alliances, MI6 and MI5, conducted massive internal purges, and the CIA gained priceless insights into Soviet trade. Yet handling Sniper was never straightforward because of deep skepticism within the American side. James Angleton, the legendary and notoriously paranoid chief of CIA counterintelligence, viewed all defectors and agents with profound suspicion. Believing the KGB was masterful at planting disinformation through false flags, Angleton's own mole hunts created delays and friction in the Sniper case, questioning motives, cross-checking every detail against other sources, and sometimes slowing the flow of action that could have protected the asset better. This institutional distrust only deepened Michal's sense of isolation. He felt like a tool being used rather than a hero being safeguarded. The psychological toll mounted as dual and triple identities tore at his mind. He was no longer fully loyal to Poland or the Soviets, yet not completely trusted by the West. Every success in passing information brought new paranoia about detection. Colleagues in Warsaw began noticing his changed behavior. Rumors of a high-level leak circulated surveillance and he had to invent excuses for his frequent Berlin trips, where he met handlers and couriered material. The moral dilemmas kept him awake. Was he a patriot trying to save the world from communist tyranny? Or a traitor betraying his homeland and abandoning his children? The love for Mard K offered fleeting solace, but also guilt, because it meant bigamy and potential exposure, if discovered. His wife Anna's mental decline added another layer of torment as he balanced family obligations with his secret life. The constant manipulation by Western agencies, who sometimes withheld support or played bureaucratic games, left him questioning if the fight for freedom was worth the personal destruction. As the months of 1960 turned into late autumn, and then December 1960, the news tightened, visibly around. Michał Goleniewski, Polish intelligence, and the KGB had picked up enough anomalies from Stasi reports about his affair and unexplained activities to launch quiet investigations. His superiors issued warnings, moved him between posts, and pressured him to end the relationship with Mard K. Yet he could feel the walls closing in. Surveillance teams appeared more frequently, colleagues avoided him, and internal memos hinted at suspicion. The psychological pressure had become almost unbearable, with every knock on the door triggering panic and every unexplained phone call raising the specter of arrest and torture. But in the midst of this gathering storm, his love for Mardke became the lifeline. Together they began whispering about the ultimate escape, a daring plan to slip away to West Berlin, where the American presence could offer sanctuary. He started preparing in secret by photographing final batches of documents, stashing emergency funds drawn from office accounts, and coordinating signals for the move. The risks were astronomical, because crossing from east to west meant evading border guards, possible killed orders, and immediate pursuit by the full might of the UB and KGB. Yet the alternative was certain doom if he stayed. His marriage to Anna had effectively ended in all but legal name. His children were caught in the crossfire of a collapsing family, and his ideological faith had long since evaporated, replaced by a burning desire for freedom and a life where he could finally drop the masks. Every step he took in those final weeks carried the weight of life or death. Every glance at Mardke reinforced his resolve that love and truth were worth risking everything for. The stage was set for one of the most audacious defections of the Cold War. A man who had given the West more than any other single source was now preparing to give himself fully to that same West, leaving behind a trail of exposed secrets that would echo through intelligence history for decades. As December 1960 approached, Michał Goleniewski knew that every step he took could mean life or death, and his daring plan to escape to the West Berlin with Mardke was about to begin. As December 1960 approached, Michał Goleniewski knew that every step he took could mean life or death, and his daring plan to escape to the West Berlin with Mardke was about to begin. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment your thoughts below. This story deserves to be heard. The final weeks of 1960 were a whirlwind of tension and meticulous preparation for Michał Goleniewski, the man the West knew only as sniper, a triple agent whose secrets had already shaken the foundations of Soviet espionage across Europe. In East Berlin, under the watchful eyes of the Stasi and his own Polish intelligence colleagues, he moved like a ghost, every action calculated to avoid suspicion while building the escape route that would carry him and his lover, Mardke, across the invisible but deadly divide separating communist East from the free West. He had been funneling last-minute batches of documents through trusted dead-drops, tiny caches hidden in parks, under benches, or inside hollowed-out objects, microfilm rolls containing names, operational codes, and technical details that could further cripple Eastern Bloc networks. He withdrew funds from official accounts under the guise of operational expenses, stashing cash in safe places for the journey ahead. Mardke, his East German companion, whose love had become his only anchor in a sea of deception, was brought into the plan step by step. She packed lightly, told no one, and prepared to abandon her life in the GDR for an uncertain future. The border between East and West Berlin was not yet sealed by the wall that infamous concrete barrier would rise in August 1961, but crossing still meant evading patrols, checkpoints, and the constant risk of betrayal from informants embedded everywhere. Michał chose the American sector, heading straight for the US consulate in West Berlin, a fortress of diplomacy where defectors could seek immediate asylum. The plan was simple in theory, but terrifying in execution. Slip through the sectors under cover of night or crowds, reach the consulate gates, and declare himself, hoping the CIA would honor the promises made in coded letters and brush passes over the previous years. Paranoia gripped him tighter than ever. Every shadow on the street felt like a tale. Every stranger's glance, a potential recognition by KGB watchers or Polish UB agents who had begun to sense something wrong in his behavior. His superiors had issued subtle warnings, reassigned him to less sensitive duties, and questioned his frequent trips to Berlin. But he deflected with excuses about personal matters and routine liaison work. The psychological strain was crushing. Nights without sleep, heart pounding at every creak in the apartment. The constant internal debate of whether love for Mardke and his shattered freedom outweighed the betrayal of his homeland, his abandoned family in Poland, and the ideology he had once believed in. He had resolve hardened as the days ticked toward January 1961. In the bitter cold of early January, the moment arrived. Michał and Mardke made their move, hearts racing as they navigated the tense streets of divided Berlin, blending into pedestrian flows, avoiding major checkpoints where papers were scrutinized, and using back routes known only to those who lived in the shadows of the city. They reached the US consulate gates without incident. A miracle, in a place crawling with spies, and Michał stepped forward, identifying himself as the long-awaited sniper, the assassin who had delivered more actionable intelligence than almost any other source in the Cold War. The guards, trained for such moments, ushered them inside quickly and quietly. Within hours, CIA officers were on the scene, verifying his identity through prearranged codes and the flood of prior material he had provided. The defection was complete. Michał Goleniewski, lieutenant colonel of Polish military intelligence, triple agent for the KGB, Poland, and now the United States, had crossed over. Mordkay, caught in the whirlwind of his choices, followed him into this new world of protection and uncertainty. The news electrified Langley. This was no ordinary walk-in, but the culmination of years of handling one of the most productive sources in agency history. Exfiltration was swift, flown out under heavy security to safe houses in West Germany, and then onward to the United States, where the real debriefing would begin. Once in America, the CIA placed Michal and Mordkay in a series of secure locations, isolated safe houses equipped with round-the-clock protection, where debriefers could extract every last drop of knowledge without risk of compromise. He received new cover identities, Franz Oldenburg for him and Irmgard Haenel for her, fabricated backstories complete with passports, documentation, and legends designed to bury his past forever. The debriefings were exhaustive, stretching over months and sometimes years, with sessions lasting hours as case officers pressed for details on Soviet tradecraft, agent networks, technical innovations and espionage equipment, and the inner workings of police and KGB operations. Michal delivered relentlessly, expanding on his earlier revelations by naming additional moles, describing recruitment methods, and mapping out sleeper cells that had lain dormant for decades. Yet, the handling was far from smooth. The agency, influenced by lingering skepticism from figures like James Angleton, who saw potential disinformation in every defector, treated him with a mix of awe and caution. Promises of full protection and a comfortable new life were made, but bureaucratic delays, personality clashes, and internal rivalries between handlers created friction. Michal felt the shifty was no longer the golden asset passing secrets from behind the Iron Curtain, but a man in custody, dependent on the goodwill of strangers who sometimes viewed him as a liability. Paranoia, already deeply ingrained, exploded into full-blown obsession. He suspected bugs in every room, believed handlers were feeding him disinformation, and feared betrayal from within the CIA itself. The mental strain compounded with the loss of his old identities. He had lived as so many men for so long that the new covers felt hollow, triggering confusion and identity crisis. Sleepless nights turned into days of agitation, arguments with Mordkay over the future, and growing isolation as the agency limited his contacts to prevent leaks. The intelligence windfall from his defection continued to reshape Western security. Building on the earlier exposures, George Blake rotting in a British prison after 42 years for betraying agents to their deaths, the Portland spy ring dismantled with Harry Houghton, Ethel G. and the Cohens unmasked. The new debriefings led to further arrests and in the UK, MI5 and MI6 conducted sweeping reviews, purging suspected penetrations and tightening vetting. In Sweden, the long-running Espionage by Colonel Stig Wenastrom was accelerated toward exposure. West Germany saw the rolling up of Heinz, Felf, and other BND infiltrators. Even in the United States and Middle East, dormant networks were disrupted, saving operations and lives. Israel benefited indirectly through shared intelligence on Soviet Middle East activities. The CIA itself learned painful lessons about handling high-value leading to improved protocols that influenced future cases. Michal's contributions were among the most valuable of the era, exposing over 1,600 communist agents and forcing the Eastern Bloc into costly reorganizations at a critical moment in the Cold War. But for Michal, personally, the price was devastating. The emotional fallout was immediate and profound. His relationship with Mordkay, once a beacon of hope, frayed under the pressure of confinement, cultural dislocation, and his mounting delusions. He began to withdraw into a fantasy world, claiming in private conversations, eventually publicly, that he was not just a Polish officer but Tsarevich Alexei Nikolaevich Romanov, the son of the last Russian Tsar Nicholas II, miraculously survived the 1918 execution in The claim emerged gradually, fueled perhaps by trauma, identity fragmentation from years of living multiple lives, or a desperate search for meaning in his uprooted existence. He insisted the entire Romanov family had escaped, that he bore the scars of hemophilia, though medical exams found no evidence, and that his true heritage explained his extraordinary abilities as a spy. In 1963, he even staged a publicized reunion with Eugenia Smith, another claimant to be Grand Duchess Anastasia, an event covered by Life magazine that drew ridicule from serious observers. The CIA, embarrassed by the spectacle, distanced itself. His access was curtailed, his stipend reduced, and he was effectively marginalized by 1964. Public reaction ranged from curiosity to outright dismissal. Few believed. A man born in 1922, Poland could be the Boyer born in 1904. But the obsession persisted. Michal published bulletins under pseudonyms like Double Eagle, railing against perceived conspiracies within Western intelligence, accusing the CIA of abandoning him, and covering up truths about the Romanovs and broader Cold War machinations. Legal battles followed. Attempts to secure citizenship eventually granted via private congressional bill, disputes over support, and fights to vindicate his claims. His marriage to Mard K collapsed amid the chaos, leaving him increasingly alone. Family ties in Poland suffered. His children grew up without him, and later his daughter Tatiana would distance herself, even changing her name to escape the shadow of her father's notoriety. The descent into obscurity was gradual but inexorable. By the 1970s and 1980s, media interest waned. The Romanov claims became a footnote in Cold War lore, dismissed by historians and genealogists. Michal lived quietly in New York, supported modestly, his once vibrant intelligence mind dulled by paranoia, disappointment, and the weight of a life spent in shadows. He died in a New York hospital on July 12, 1993, at the age of 70, slipping away with little fanfare. No major obituaries, no public grave marker under any of his names. His daughter Tatiana, when later contacted by researchers, chose silence, preserving her own privacy after years in the orbit of his turbulent legacy. Yet the human cost was undeniable. A man who risked everything for freedom ended up broken by the very system he helped protect. His love affairs shattered, his family fractured, his mind unraveling in isolation. The obsession with royal heritage may have been delusion, but it reflected a deeper truth, a profound psychological toll of espionage, where identities blur, trust erodes, and the line between reality and fiction dissolves. Michał Goleniewski's legacy endures, not in the headlines he never fully claimed, but in the quiet reshaping of history he achieved. As one of the most productive defectors of the Cold War, his intelligence saved countless lives, dismantled spy rings that threatened Western security, and provided insights that strengthened alliances at a pivotal time. He exposed the fragility of communist espionage empires and forced the West to confront its own vulnerabilities. Yet his story is also a cautionary tale of the human price paid in the shadows. The paranoia, the betrayals, the lost loves, the descent into marginalization. In the end, he gave the free world an incalculable gift, only to find himself adrift in it. This story is based on historical intelligence records, declassified documents, and scholarly research. All names, events, and sources are referenced in the description. This is presented for educational and documentary purposes only. Some events may be fictionalized for narrative clarity and dramatic flow. Michał Goleniewski may have faded into obscurity, but the intelligence he risked his life to deliver reshaped the course of the Cold War forever. Check the description for full sources and references. Thank you for watching.